This artwork by Ryder refers to Donald Trump's efforts to rattle the sabers in regards to foreign policy. This artwork by Ryder refers to Donald Trump's efforts to rattle the sabers in regards to foreign policy. Ryder Thomas Gildersleeve foreign policy goal should be to avoid war. To protect ourselves against external violence, we must have the military power to be able to say, "You do that, and we'll clobber you," and mean it. Such a policy is expensive, but it's cheaper than war. Given a military potential sufficient to protect ourselves against external aggression, and given that, to make this potential effective, we must, on occasion, use it, we need a clear guideline as to when we should engage in military action and when we should refrain. One of the most ancient principles of international relations is the concept of the sovereignty of nations, the right of each nation to do as it will within its borders. With one exception, we have no right to interfere with what another nation does. The exception is when that nation presents us with a clear and present threat to our vital national interests. Interfering in another nation's domestic matters is going to be resented by the Congress of Nations. Our power isn't without limits, and we need the support and cooperation of the international community to most effectively look after our interests. At worst, involving ourselves in the internal working of other nations can lead to war, and war is destabilizing. It's elusive, untamed, costly, difficult to control, fraught with surprise, and sure to give rise to unintended consequences. When we go to war, the best that we're going to be able to do is win. We're then faced with what to do after the war is won. Clausewitz said that war is an act of violence to compel our opponent to fulfill our will. Our enemy is doing something that we don't want him to do, and we go to war to stop him from doing it. Consequently, when it comes to war, the strategy has to be to clear, hold and build. The war is the clearing operation, which is concerned with defeating the enemy and stopping him from doing what we don't want him to do. To see that the enemy continues to refrain from doing what we don't want him to do after the war is over, it's necessary to garrison the cleared area with troops to see that the enemy continues to behave. However, a holding operation can never be more than a short-term solution to the problem. In the long run, holding is costly, dangerous, it fosters insurgency, and politically problematic. Continued occupation ultimately comes to be seen by other nations as colonialism. The only lasting solution is to build a stable, healthy, indigenous political order that allows the local population to thrive in harmony with us, which requires a large investment in time and effort. All of which says something about how hard we should think about the long term before we contemplate injecting ourselves into a trouble spot. We should define goals precisely and check the price of a clear, hold and build operation before buying. We should approach other nations as a friend who wishes them well. When disagreements appear, we should avoid provocation and escalation and try to resolve issues. Our posture should be one of conciliation, not confrontation. International terrorism is a matter for concern. There's no problem with our supplying intelligence and strategic support to local forces fighting to wipe out infestations of international terrorists, but the boots on the ground should be those of these local forces. When the clearing operation is complete, it should be the local forces who should be dealing with the holding and building operations to follow. Afghanistan is a continuing problem. If we get out, the Taliban will return, and they'll provide sanctuary for Al-Qaeda. That's a development that we can't permit. So we have to stay there. However, to the extent possible, we should limit our presence. What's going on in the Middle East is a battle between the Sunnis, represented by Saudi Arabia, and the Shia, represented by Iran. We should stay out of it. We will be talking to North Korea. Is this going to convince them that they have nothing to fear from us? Russia is following a program of military expansion. The best approach here is to resist, with non-military means, Russia's attempts at expansion and wait it out. Barring some unseen development, Russia's economy shouldn't, for long, be able to support a large military adventure. NATO has outlived its purpose, which was to serve as a part of our containment policy of Soviet Russia during the Cold War. Instead of preserving NATO and pushing it east, which Russia sees as a provocation, it should be disbanded. China bears watching, but for now, it doesn't threaten us. Through friendly persuasion, we should continue to encourage China to be a responsible member of the global community. Thomas Gildersleeve is a resident of